Alright, so for this video I'm going to do something a little bit different. I actually wrote down some notes because I'm really notoriously bad about not getting all the thoughts that I would like to get out onto the screen. And so I'll be looking at my notes intermittely, just looking at them, so I can stay on track and get everything out that I want to get out. This video is about asexuality again. I think it's just really important, not necessarily that I think about my sexuality all that often, but I think it's important because there's so little visibility compared to other sexualities, and I think the discovery of asexuality is just really, it's very nuanced. Very nuanced. Sexuality itself is just nuanced, and so it's difficult to understand exactly what's going on in you. And so I'm going to go over kind of a little more in depth about how I went through understanding my identity and my sexuality and the different stages that I went through. Alright, so here goes. When I was very young, I didn't really have much of a concept of sexuality or gender or really anything. My parents were pretty sheltering. I did get a lot of information about sex. Like, I knew from a very, very young age, from like 5 or 6, how sex worked. And my mom made sure that we all knew how it worked, and I never felt weird about talking about sex, like not so much in the attraction way, but in the mechanics, the physical sex itself. I know how that shit works, and I'm 6 years old. And so when I was younger, I was, of course, conditioned to be heterosexual. I was just assumed to be heterosexual. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because the majority of people that my family knew, that my parents knew, they were heterosexual. And so it's safe to assume the status quo. I don't hold it against them that they conditioned me heterosexual. It did make things a little bit more difficult to circumnavigate, but it wasn't necessarily the worst thing that could have possibly happened. And so as I got older, like maybe 8, 9, I would have crushes on both girls and guys. And I noticed when I was even younger than that, I would take Victoria's Secret magazines that my aunt would have at her beauty salon, and I would look through them and look at the boobs, and I was like, the boobs are cool. I like the boobs. And I knew it was something that I shouldn't be doing, and so I would hide to do it. I remember really distinctly, my first crush on a girl was this girl named Demetrius. She was the coolest person ever, and she went to my summer camp, and I would follow her around like a stalker. I was so creepy. Oh my god, I was so creepy, guys. And I do the same thing with guys. When I was a little kid, I was just a creeper. I was just a little stalker, creeper, little freak that would follow people around and write about them in my diary, and I was such a dork. When I was in 5th grade, I remember there was a kid that was calling this girl a lesbian, and I was like, what's a lesbian? And the girl was like, oh, that's a girl that's attracted to girls. And I was like, huh, I'm kind of a lesbian. And I mean, I didn't say that to her because I knew that was something that you shouldn't say. But I found that that kind of is what I am. And I figured that's just something that you don't talk about, because I don't talk about my crushes to people because I don't want people to tell other people that I like them. And so I figured that's how it worked, that you just keep that stuff to yourself and it'll come later. As I get older, I'll figure it out. And so I kind of postponed understanding my whole sexuality when I was a little kid. I grew up not only really sheltered, but I had very little information about sexuality, because we did have, sex ed class, but that was mostly teaching you the mechanics, the shit that I already knew from when I was 6 years old. But they didn't really talk about different sexualities and sexual orientations and all that stuff. I remember when I was 10 years old, was the first time we got a computer. That's the first time that I was on the internet. And so I wasn't thinking about that kind of stuff, really. So I wasn't thinking about looking up stuff about sexuality or really anything. I looked up porn. Honestly, I looked up porn because I fucking like porn. So that was 10-year-old me. And so back then, the way that sexuality was kind of described or defined was kind of a mashup of sexuality and romantic attraction. And so the definition was like, so say like you are a person who is homosexual. You are a person that is capable of falling in love with another person of the same gender, and you are sexually attracted to that person of the same gender. And so it didn't really take into account the differences between romantic attraction and sexual attraction. It just was like all the same thing. It just all rolled up into one little ball. There you go. And so I had a lot of difficulty trying to decipher what exactly I identified with as I got older. Coming off high school, I identified best with bisexuality, and so I went along with that for a good while. At the end of high school, I started, accumulating these definitions of different sexualities and stuff, and I found that pansexuality was a lot closer to what I was thinking, because gender didn't really play much of a role in the people that I found attractive and that I was attracted to, that I wanted to be around. When I finished high school, I met my fiance. Literally the first semester of college, I met my fiance. And it's funny because I wasn't looking for anyone. I had an OkCupid account, and that's how I met him. And I was just doing the quizzes. And he contacted me, and I was like, he seems like a cool guy. Maybe we can be friends. And I don't know. I don't fucking know, guys. I don't know. Don't know how that happened, because I was just taking a complete, I was just focusing on school, really. And so I wasn't even thinking about romance or sex or anything of the sort. And so I've already talked about it, about how, my first sexual experiences, and how I really actually enjoyed sex to start off with. And it was maybe a few months in that I started feeling some kind of way about sex. It just made me feel like I just didn't want to do it. And it got worse and worse to the point that I dreaded doing it. And I would start drinking. I would drink myself into a fucking stupor. So I would be more, receptive to sexual advances. I would do that to myself, and caused major issues, not only for my fiance, because he feels like he is literally raping me, but also for myself physically and mentally, because mentally that's just fucking you up. Physically, I have that autoimmune disorder that I talk about all the time, and all the sugar and stuff and alcohol tends to cause flare-ups, real bad flare-ups. And so fuck. It was just mistake after mistake after mistake. And so during that time, I was identifying closest with hyposexuality. I wasn't sure, because I knew that there was asexuality. I knew that there was such thing as asexuality, but the way that I was seeing it defined was people that didn't have sex, or didn't masturbate, none of it. No sexual attraction, no sexual drive, no libido, nothing. And I definitely did have, a sex drive, or maybe, I don't know. I definitely needed to clean out the pipes from time to time, I guess is the best way to explain it. And so I didn't necessarily feel attraction to other people, but I wasn't entirely certain of that at that time. And so a ways into my relationship with my fiance, we decided to go non-monogamous. And I don't identify as poly, but I do understand polyamory pretty good, and I identify with it. And so, because I'm in a monogamous relationship, and so I don't indulge in that part of myself. But for this time I did, and it was really, really nice. I had a girlfriend for a little bit, and she was wonderful. She was just great. She was great. She was awesome. She was fantastic. I love you. But I found that in being with her, that I was not sexually attracted to people. And I think it took meeting a new person to understand exactly how all that worked. I think I couldn't have figured it out with my fiance because I was in too far with him. There was too many things that were routine to me. And learning a whole new routine with someone else, it actually helped me to understand, holy shit, I'm missing a piece of this puzzle that I thought I had. And I don't know, it just blew my mind. It was just incredible. I can't even explain how eye-opening it was. So I found that I wasn't sexually attracted to people, And I also was encountering more definitions of asexuality, and so I started to move away from hyposexuality, from like almost like a disease. Like whenever you talk about someone being hyposexual, being like low sex drive, it's almost referred to like it's a disease, like there's a problem with you. And so I always kind of assumed that there was a problem with me. And then understanding asexuality, I found, oh shit, not only is it more about the attraction than it is like physically having sex, there's also another facet to this. Like, we're talking about sexual attraction and romantic attraction. Like, holy shit, they're two different things? How does that work? Like, again. And so I remember telling a friend a while back that I might not identify as pansexual anymore. And I remember they were like, holy shit, just make up your mind. Like, pansexuality and asexuality are total, like, polar opposites. Like, what's wrong with you that you can't understand what your sexuality is? And, I mean, I understand how someone would say that, but going from the definition that I was given from, like, a very young age, like, where you match up sexual attraction and romantic attraction, it's actually really, really difficult to discern the difference between pansexuality and asexuality. And sex is just so much, like, sexual attraction and romantic attraction, they're just so much more nuanced than making, you know, asexuality and pansexuality polar opposites. Because I'm a person that identifies as pan-romantic. And so I can romantically be attracted to all genders, but I'm not sexually attracted to them. So there was a fundamental problem in me trying to define my identity because I was mashing up sexual attraction and romantic attraction in my mind. And so it's very difficult, you know, to work through that. And I think that people need to understand that. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, there you go. And so it takes some searching, and it takes some information, it takes some research. It definitely does. And so, in that, I will end this video. I hope it helped someone, maybe, that is kind of confused about their sexual orientation and their romantic orientation, because those are two very different things. But yeah, paces.